The 21st Daily Trust Dialogue, coupled with the presentation of the African of the Year Award, focused on the theme Tinubu's economic reforms, gainers and losers. Well, the occasion started with Kabir Yusuf, chairman of the board of directors of Media Trust Group, setting the stage for the discussion, addressing contemporary issues such as the war in Gaza and the state of Nigeria's economy under President Bola Tinubu. Championing the occasion, former Minister of National Planning Shamsuddeen Usman endeavored to reconcile the Tinubu administration's policy direction with the current economic realities in the country. The consensus emerged that although premature to definitively judge the success or failure of Tinubu's reforms, early indicators suggest a disconnect between policy options and also current realities, necessitating a more realistic approach. Well, for us to get in-depth analysis on the issues raised and possible solutions, we're joined in the studio by the Deputy Editor-in-Chief at the Daily Trust, Dr. Suleiman. Welcome, Doctor.
Thank you very much.
Yes. First of all, Doctor, I can see from your eyes that the stress is really wearing you.
It's
Doctor,
fine.
First, how was the event? But before you answer that question, let's get excerpts from the dialogue yesterday.
The 21st Daily Trust Dialogue, coupled with the presentation of the African of the Year Award, focused on the theme Tinubu's economic reforms, gainers and losers. Kabir Yusuf, chairman of the board of directors Media Trust Group, set the stage for the discussion, addressing contemporary issues such as the war on Gaza and the state of Nigeria's economy under President Bola Tinubu.
The socio-economic challenges of this country are mounting, and I think they're even becoming more daunting. The promises by politicians are getting more creative, but to judge by the results, the more things are supposed to change, the more they have remained the same.
Championing the occasion, former Minister of National Planning Shamsuddeen Usman endeavored to reconcile the Tinubu administration's policy direction with the current economic realities in the country.
On the face of it, it looks like the average Nigerian seems to be the loser of that policy. But who is the winner? Certainly not indicate, because they've lost that bit of business, even though some of them are still importing and selling in the unregulated market and making money.
While the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Wale Edun, was notably absent, President of the Nigeria Labour Congress, Joe Ajaero, and Dr. Victoria Akai extensively addressed the theme, with participants adding their voices to the conversation.
If you check even the pronouncement this year, you hear that they have budgeted 1.8 trillion as subsidy for the power sector. Meanwhile, the power sector was privatized at the cost of 400 billion. That was what they sold the then NEPA. And then you subsidize it with 1.8 trillion in a year. A personal business, you sold your house for 2 million and you are giving the person 10 million to repair it. That is prodigal economy.
I extracted some gains, improved that the Nigerian economy is growing at a faster pace, 3.3% compared to the population growth. Nigeria's oil production rose to 9.16% to an average of about 1.3 million barrels per day in 2023.
And economics everywhere in the world developed by production. And production is a function of capital. You have to invest. And the policies you are putting up is shrinking those capital. You are increasing tax. How capital can be developed and invest for production?
It's not all gloomy. It's not all emergency. Of course, if you have an immediate shock, it is important that you have a first aid, kind of, before a long-term solution is being provided.
The consensus emerged that although premature to definitively judge the success or failure of Tinubu's reforms, early indicators suggest a disconnect between policy options and current economic realities, necessitating a more realistic approach. The highlight of the event was the presentation of the African of the Year Award to Dr. Imtiaz Suleiman, facilitated through the South African High Commissioner to Nigeria, Shamsuddeen Usman.
Well, that was excerpts from the dialogue yesterday. Dr. Tinubu's economic reforms, gainers and losers. I think the dialogue made it quite clear who the losers were. So, what next for Nigerians?
First of all, I would not say that the dialogue made it quite clear who the Nigerians were, because the dialogue itself does not take a position. It is the position of those who are invited to come and speak there. And several spoke their minds about who are the losers and who are the gainers. I moderated the event.
You did a good job doing that.
Thank you very much.
That was a human's job.
So that puts me in a vantage position to hear all sides of the argument. And I think we can't say for sure that this particular groups are losers or gainers. But the Comrade Joe Ajuro, he was very clear that those in government are already gaining, because they are able to transport themselves to work. They are able to pay for basic things that they need, even with a high cost, without any stress. On the other hand, Nigerians, when going to work, they face even more challenges than they did before. So for him, it's clear to see that Nigerians, the masses, are the losers. Those whose 35%, is it 35,000 naira wage increase have not been paid. Those who palliatives, either in transport or in conditional cash transfers, have not received anything, or in terms of food, and so on. But also, there was another theme there, which is that 7 months, it is far too few, too short, to be able to tell whether even the masses are going to remain losers or are going to be losers. Because government reforms sometimes take time to yield the desired fruits. So maybe later on, at some later point in time, like one of the panelists, Dr. Victoria Akai, was trying to project, that there are good indications at present that the near future is going to be better. But even that position was not left free. There were others who also criticized that position. So on the whole, I would say that all the sides had an opportunity to say how they think or what they feel about the government's economic reforms.
All right. Doctor, the NLC president mentioned that the bane of Nigeria's problems is the fuel subsidy removal, which translated the price of fuel from its initial 187 naira to around 700 naira. And he says until some of these issues around subsidy removal are addressed, Nigerians will continue to suffer. However, there was also calls to ensure that ministers, there is a mechanism to check and assess performances of ministers to ensure that they meet up with their mandate. Seeing that the president and his body language since he got into office has been one who has stated clearly, if you don't perform as a minister, you will leave the cabinet. Would you say it is one that would yield some of these results that and recommendations that were raised during the dialogue?
Thank you. First of all, I will start with the last question, which is the president. That's about the KPI, that is key performance indicators. That if you don't measure up, for example, if you don't turn up to work tomorrow or next tomorrow, there will be consequences, and so on. And in Nigeria, government officials don't have that system of consequences for not performing, even when they turn up to work. We want more than just turning up to work. We want to see that the policies that they are doing are actually working and people are benefiting from them. It is good for the president to say that, but I will not clap for the president yet, merely on account of saying that. We have had retreats for federal ministers, for government officials, where these kind of statements have been made previously, but to take action when there is a need to take action, you know, that has always been quite benign. The president has indicated, for example, with the Better Edu scandal, that he is happy to show people the way out, you know, which is not the case in our recent past, you know, which wasn't the case in our recent past. So that's a good thing. But if you left to me, I would say that the body language coming out of more than 50% of the ministries right now, that body language is not much encouraging. So where there is really some enthusiasm to show people the door if they are not performing, we should have seen some more talk, you know, even without anybody getting sacked, because 1 year is still it's not much time to start saying somebody has failed in an office, you know. But at least you see some talk from the president, you know, directed at the ministers, which in turn can make them to now also double efforts, you know, get serious about what they are doing. There are many ministers that you have not heard of them since the day they were appointed, meaning that they have just believed since the day, thank you, they were sworn in, you know. So whereas it's good to have performance indicators, some mechanism for measuring and rewarding or punishing performance, because that's all presidents need to do. You don't have to do everything yourself.
Indeed.
You know, that's to get the right people and then give them reward if they are doing well, or punish them if they are not doing well. You know, it's as simple as that's what the job requires.
And that's what makes it a democracy.
It's not a job for a nice person. It's a job for the right person.
Just like the SFs actually pointed out, we're expecting the Minister of Coordinating Economy to be there. At least we could have gotten a glimpse of, you know, when the losers and the gainers will be maybe in the next 7 months. But we didn't get one reason or the other, he wasn't there. But we had other government officials who were there talking about.
No. It's good that other government officials were there, but they were not the ones invited to be part of the panel. It is the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister for the Economy that was invited to come and present the government's case, as it were, if they truly understand it up there. It is quite unfortunate, I have to be honest with you, and it reflects the kind of attitude that people in government have towards Nigerians, you know, that because he didn't send an apology, he didn't send a representative. You could have sent a junior minister, you could have sent the PAMSEC, you know, to make your presentation, to make your, you could have sent somebody, anyone in government, any senior person that, you know, in government, and especially that you knew that the chairman of the event was a former Minister of Finance, was also a former Minister of National Planning, was a Deputy Governor of the Central Bank. You know, so that the idea of peer-to-peer was already established. You can't say that a former Minister of Finance, the position you are now holding, somebody who did it like 10, 15 years before you, you know, or somebody who was a Deputy Governor. You can't say, the Wale's CV does not in any way match the CV of the chairman of the event. So even for respect for that, for him, the chairman of you turn up. But more importantly, you turn up to come and make the government's case.
Indeed.
It gives you an opportunity to even frame the topic and reframe it in a different way.
For accountability now? Because
and how is it looking for this administration, especially because I mean we're talking about issues of performance and not, you know, living up to expectation, and then there's this.
So frankly, for me, that's part of performance. Frankly, because we're in a democracy. You understand? There's nothing special about him or special about Suleiman. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's not a military government. Indeed. You know, he is in his position because of our democratic process. That process encompasses so many things, and these many things must also be respected. One of these things is to be invited to come and make a case against government. You see, U.S. presidential candidates, U.S. presidents, U.S. ministers, secretaries of state, and so on and so forth, speaking to or making a case about their positions to maybe less than 50 people or less than 30 people in a town hall, because they know that the message will go beyond that town hall, you know, to across the country. But more than that, because they know that democracy demands it. Democracy is a persuasive, is a system of persuasion. So it's not a system where people can feel like, okay, they are above this or above that. I don't know his excuses. And perhaps he might have some good excuses, you know, but not communicating them. Not communicating them by protocol, you know, demonstrates disrespect, not just to the media organization, but to Nigerians.
A lot of Nigerians.
To Nigerians, whose platform that we represent.
You
so
know,
that's
most of the
and
issues
it's not alone. That's how generally government officials behave. That's still colonial mentality that if we're in government, therefore we're everybody else. That's nonsense. If you are in government, you are still a citizen. You have to be a citizen first before you can be in government.
Do you think that after the dialogue, because of the absence of the minister or the coordinating minister of economics, do you think that, you know, a lot of things are left on the table and begging for answers?
Absolutely. Look at the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper as you did the review earlier. Cool? The paper is leading with the position of Labour. The chances are that, because news differs to status, always. So chances are that if the minister had been there and made a case, chances are that the paper would be leading with his own position first.
Most likely.
Most likely. You know, before going to, you know, what the Labour says or what other people at the meeting say. But he didn't say, he didn't even turn up in the first place, you know, which is a story in its own right that should have been told, you know, because people cannot give their word. If you are in government, you don't have the luxury of giving your word and then not turning up and not having any explanation for that. So what that means is that he helped to leave the government open to attack in the public space. Indeed. And this sort of things are among those things that build onto how Nigerians and citizens and voters, you know, find or form their impressions about government. And ultimately, these sort of things building into elections and votes and defeats and successes at election.
Well, in his absence, they discussed other issues around the economy, key of which is fixing loopholes in forex policy, the likes of trying to meet up with the inflation figures that has been rising above, you know, the grasp of a lot of Nigerians and the likes of that. Interestingly, if he was there, he would have been able to speak, you know, through the side of the government and perhaps the CBN. But then again, he's not there. And the questions around how these issues would be addressed, you know, remains open. But Doctor, do you think that this absence, in some cases or some reasons, worsens the perception that Nigerians have, you know, of the government, of this administration, and their seriousness towards addressing these issues that were discussed at the time?
Thank you. I rather find it unfortunate, you know, because you are certainly right. There is an issue of perception here, you know. Unfortunately, the perception, when you say government, you just mean the man at the head of the government. So you mean the president himself. But he is not the president. He is an appointee of the president who is to drive an objective of the president. I hope he shows that he understands that clearly, because by not turning up, he doesn't show that he does understand it. Because what this means, you know, the president himself is using his own offices, his own opportunities to communicate a different message to Nigerians. And I hope that Nigerians get that perception, which is that he is somebody who listens. You know, I don't know Tinubu from heaven or from Adam or from where. I've never met him. I would be entirely happy to live the rest of my life without having to meet him. So, but the idea is that in the past few months, he has taken certain actions that demonstrate that he listens to Nigerians. You know, when somebody, I've written this in my column, when Nigerians show anger towards a decision that he has taken, you know, he has shown some readiness to backtrack from that decision. You know, for example, when people say, how can you appoint a 24-year-old to come and be the chairman of it? It's just, he withdrew the young man. When people say, the cost of governance. You can't travel to COP with 1,000 people. He made a declaration, an announcement that no, stop this. Make only 6 people. 10, 15 people with myself, Vice President, First Ladies, and the wife of the Vice President. All of them for 5 people. Even the statement is significant, because it will give limitations to how much people can act, with regard to Western Nigeria's money on foreign trips, or even domestic ones. And then many situations like that, better edu. When people say, she has to be suspended, she has to be, he agreed. So that is the impression that the president is creating about himself by his own actions, the perception that he wants Nigerians to have about him and his government. But some of his appointees, like we saw yesterday, are now working counter to that. Despite in my opinion, that is, despite this fact. Because it's fine for a minister is not you or me, let's be honest. So it is possible that even having given his word, something urgent can come up. We can understand that. But you have to communicate with the organizers of the event. And if you do, you are showing respect not to the organizers necessarily, but to Nigerians that they represent. The platform is for Nigerian public. It's not for Daily Trust, per se.
Doctor, yesterday during the panel session with Joe Ajaero and also Dr. Victoria Okai, Joe Ajaero said something that pricked my attention. He said that Nigeria is an underdeveloping country, and he said that unapologetically. And that's because, he thinks that Nigeria has lost itself. We've lost our glory days, and we need to do something now, or it just gets out of hand.
Thank you.
Do you align with that thought?
Not necessarily. About first of all, he asked a question earlier, which you helped to bring my mind to. You see, Joe Ajaero was the president of the Nigeria Labour Congress at the time the fuel subsidy was removed. 2 things happened during that process. Number one, there has never been a time in the history of Nigeria when, because he said something significant also, which is that fuel subsidy simply means increase in the price of fuel, which is a fact, But at the time, this time around, in June last year, when fuel subsidy was removed, 2 things happened that don't have any precedence in Nigeria, as far as fuel subsidy history is concerned. The first time is that it was the very first time that we saw that much of a jump between today's prices and tomorrow's prices. He himself said it, from 187, which was the official, you can even say 195, which we all know what we were buying, to 517 naira, 520, 550, immediately in 1 hour. That's like 3 times, what the price was today. There's never been, at a spot, there's never been a time in the history of, you can move from 95 to 145 to 130. Prices. You can add 80 naira, you can add 50 naira or 100 naira, but we've never had a situation where 300 naira plus or 350 naira plus, that is double the current price, was added onto that current price at once in Nigeria. It's never happened before. That's number one. Interestingly, I was moderator yesterday, so my opinion doesn't count. You understand, So interestingly, it was also the first time that there was no pushback, no serious and significant pushback from Labour. Labour under Joe Ajaero that same day, that same time. The problem is the media in Nigeria. They really have to understand that it is not just the government that they need to hold to account or that should be held to account, but other players in the system should also be held to account, including Labour and Labour leaders, including even citizens.
All right. Interestingly, let's take excerpt from President of the Nigeria Labour Congress, Joe Ajaero, who spoke at the 21st Daily Trust Dialogue.
Thank you.
And some of them seem to be emergency policies. I'm not going to talk critically on all the economic policies. I'm going to talk on how it affects the common man on the street. And that is what concerns me. And by the time the topics were given, the winners and the gainers. You knew the winners and the gainers. That was why you brought me here as the losers, representing the losers. So as a representative of the losers, I will talk from that perspective, so that this debate will balance. I don't intend to read, but let me just look at what I call reforms. I say reforms are any kind. Reforms of any kind comes with an acceptance that the existing order has become ineffective and inefficient, thus needs to be rejigged for greater performance. It is this acceptance that creates the urgency for reform. In any case, reforms are expected to produce better results or outcomes for the people. If not, it becomes deformation.
That was the president of the Nigerian Labour Congress, and by extension, the representative of the losers, like he said.
No, but that's precisely my point. He and his office and their performance at the time that the subsidy was announced were part of what makes Nigerians to become losers, as he now says. Because at all times in the history, yes, because they were, okay, we'll do strike next 3 weeks. We'll do strike next 3 weeks, until the issue became Nigerians, just got used to it.
So you think that wasn't a good approach at all?
No. Every time that government had increased fuel in Nigeria, astronomically, the Labour had always masked government immediately and swiftly. And that swiftness helps the government, and to mobilize the people on the side of Labour, and then gives Labour a case, then making government to at least reduce the cost. So perhaps we could have had, instead of paying 660 that he's talking about now, or 700, maybe 400, maybe 300.
Did you think that the palliatives that was suggested or given to some quarter, because I didn't receive palliative, so did you think that it doused the tension during the time Labour was to take action?
It only actually got things worse, because a lot of people didn't get, because government itself did not prepare to deliver these palliatives systematically. They gave most of the palliatives to the states. If you give something to a state governor, you are saying that it should be managed according to his own whims.
When you
Doctor,
look at that,
once again, apologies. Would you describe the reaction and the coping mechanisms of Nigerians as the reason why we found ourselves in this situation? Because, like you said, the government had increased the price of the petrol, come the removal of the fuel subsidy, and it was met with an outright rejection from Labour initially. But the trivialization of the issues subsequently made it lose steam, and Nigeria, some way, somehow, just decided to keep up and be resilient and continue with their life. Somebody in a book that I'm reading, How Nigerians Are Self-Organizing People, described Nigerians as anti-fragile, which means that Nigerians find a way to thrive inside and outside of really dire and difficult situation. Would you say this is the reason why the government has been able to get away with this?
That's good thinking, and I like that idea. Whether it's necessarily a good thing for building a democratic governance in the country, I don't know. Because citizens have to be able to say, we don't want this.
And stay on it.
And stay on it. So if you cannot endure, because what that means is people not necessarily, you can see that, you can call it some kind of resilience to be able to thrive or survive despite situations, but it also undermines collective resolve.
Exactly, Doctor. And the question of whether it's sustainable.
Yes, to stay on point on certain things. It's what we saw with the End SARS movement. It could have solved achieved something quite concrete if they had been able to stay on point. Issues. And people have done it around the world. How do you think the Americans now have votes? Black Americans now have votes. How do you think they are still not slaves? How do you think, you understand, people had to bear suffering in order to have a better opportunity tomorrow. But if you say no, because my family, I need food for tomorrow, then we all have to
Doctor, pardon me for coming back to the question of the minister's absence. It's really concerning because the president was given a mandate which he intends to deliver to the people according to him. Absolutely. And that mandate, by extension, was given to a minister who is supposed to be a representative in trust to the people. And unfortunately, the minister was not there to...
I would say at this point, let's not overflog the minister. Because we haven't had his explanation still. The thing that is wrong there is not necessarily that, because the minister, he can ask somebody to, even if he sends his special assistant, we will treat the special assistant as the minister.
Like it were him.
You understand, But it is not having that response, not having that communication, even a text message, I'm sorry, I'm held up. That would have been enough. Then we would tell Nigerians that this is what has happened, and we will know what, because throughout we kept expecting that it is possible he can just come at any moment. So we left the seat open, even though we could have easily asked, for example, the presidential advisor on economic matters in the office of the vice president, Dr. Tobe Fashua, who was there to stand in and speak in his own capacity, but speak on behalf of the government. We could have made that change right there and then. But we kept hoping and expecting that the minister will come at any point. But like I said, I think we shouldn't overflog that. Let's wait and hear whatever explanations may have been.
Okay, just to make it clear, the minister wasn't there, but we had a lot of professionals who were really interested in the conversation. And if you missed that broadcast and you weren't there physical, and then you really missed a lot. But coming to that, watching the program yesterday, because I had to candidate from the studio, and I saw a lot of professionals who are willing. People in government, past personnel in government were present, and that is an indication that Nigerians are very interested in the economic reforms, and it's really biting hard. And one of the things that was pointed out, of course, was the fact that we do not have a middle class in this country anymore because of this fuel subsidy and some of the economic reforms has really taking that out.
Of course, we have a middle class. I don't like Nigerians speaking this
now, what do you think that this means now? Because we are interested, professionals are interested, the ordinary Nigerians are interested in this conversation. What does this mean moving forward?
Thank you. I have to address this issue of middle class. All of us here are in the middle class, one way or the other. Yes, because our incomes, particularly you guys, our incomes ensure that we stay above poverty level, even if we don't accumulate stupendous wealth.
Put us on a very high pedestal.
Exactly. Somebody will like, we're thinking, okay,
but
maybe.
Frankly, there are middle classes in Nigeria. Last year we attended, what's it called? 2022, attended the Lagos Business School Senior Management. Everybody there can be called middle class, and we're in hundreds, and so on. So the idea that the middle is just, we like generalizations sometimes without facts to support these generalizations.
So you don't agree with that thought?
I can't call myself, anyway, let me not say that. You understand what I'm saying? Certainly middle class, but that's besides the point. You are absolutely correct that there were a lot of professionals there. There were a lot of people, some of whom came on their own, because I think it is partly because the event itself, the Daily Trust Annual Dialogue, has established itself as a forum that most people want to attend because of the kinds of conversations on national issues that happen there.
Dr. Victoria admitted that is one of the most interesting and impactful conversations she has ever
attended. Yes,
and
that's former chair of Abuja Chamber of Commerce speaking. So she would have attended many events before. So that's one reason why even me, a lot of people called me. Okay, how about this? When are you doing it? I'll be coming. And so on. But we also have to understand that in Nigeria today, one of the things I've learned from experience in recent weeks is if somebody moves from point A to point B today, and you have a distance of 2 or 3 kilometers there, they have incurred considerable expense already.
Indeed.
that's just what we have to accept nowadays. So for some people who might have wanted to come still, maybe transport issues or other things may have, prevented them from coming. Otherwise, we probably could still have had more participation than we did yesterday.
Doctor, for the sake of time, it's been 21 years since the beginning of thought-provoking conversations to profile and identify problems in the Nigerian society and by extension the African continent, with an intention to improve the living conditions and of course the economies of Nigeria and by extension of course Africa. Doctor, it's been a lovely conversation with you. Explaining and giving insights and perspectives on all of the issues. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate it.